Happy Hump Day and welcome into another episode of Hornets Daily, presented by FanArc, your one-stop shop for all things Charlotte Hornets. I'm your host, Vance Ballard, but you know by now the good people out there, they call me VB. Want to thank everybody, as always, for watching along, joining in today. Be sure to hit that subscribe button, leave a like and a comment down in the comment section. We dove into the chat yesterday on the show for the first time. Had a good time doing that, bringing some of you guys on, making Hornets Daily a little bit more interactive here for the people. We're going to continue to do that as we progress through the podcasts. As a matter of fact, we'll end today's show with a viewer thought I found to be quite interesting. We'll see what you guys think about that. I'll get your opinion on it in the chat. A chat about the chat. We'll see how that goes as well. Not a crazy packed show here on this Wednesday, but there was some buzz around the Queen City nonetheless. And as you know, here on Hornets Daily, that's what we do. We bring you all the buzz from the beautiful city of Charlotte. Now, Drew Peterson, he's a Hornet. I'm not sure if that classifies as the buzz I was just talking about, but the big man did sign a two-way deal with the Greensboro Swarm and the Charlotte Hornets, official on Tuesday. Now, again, not sure if that has any significance to the organization, to the team, to the roster at all, other than it is a reunion of former Boston Celtics, as he and Coach Charles Lee were both members of the 2024 organization that won the NBA championship. Say that a little lighter in regards to Peterson, as he was rookie in his rookie year and only played 3 games for the Celtics that year while being on a two-way contract in Maine as well. But I mentioned that Peterson is a big man, and it's always nice to add those to the roster if they can come to any fruition. If Peterson can find a way to play into this rotation, then it'll be nice to have another big man, because we know the situation down in Charlotte right now, slim pickings to say the least in terms of the big man group, and he does have that familiarity, that's a word you got to say in a hurry, with Coach Charles Lee, so that just would make it easier for him to fit into the rotation if he does find a way to do so. Maybe surprise some people in Greensboro, earn himself some NBA minutes. Who knows? If it works, it works. I'm all the way here for it. A little more important roster news. I wouldn't call it world-shattering by any means, but something that could definitely mean more than a Peterson signing. The Hornets waived veteran guard Josh Okogie on Tuesday. We'll talk about that again, get into what it may mean for the organization. Charles Lee sat down with the Charlotte Observer, gave a little bit of insight about a bunch of different topics, specifically LaMelo Ball and Colin Sexton. Now, he did talk more individually about Colin Sexton, as he is the newer addition of the two, but he also spoke about both of them being on the court at the same time and how he thinks maybe that could mesh together, or his thoughts on them playing at the same time as well. Baron Davis went on the podcast podcast with Paul George, and you ask, why is this significant? Well, they talked in depth and at a pretty good length about the Charlotte Hornets and what Baron Davis hopes could be the future of this organization. He laid some things out we'll talk about, but specifically Podcast P himself, he had some very interesting thoughts about Charlotte as a franchise, also as a city, but more about the franchise. We'll get into that. I'll let you know what I think about Podcast P's thoughts about the Hornets organization. And as I mentioned, we'll dive back into the comment section. We'll go out on today's show with a thought from the chat, a proposition, if you will, something one of our viewers thinks we should do here in Charlotte. We'll see what you guys think about it, and I'll tell you how I feel as well. Now, if there's anything you know about us here on Hornets Daily, we don't do beating around the bush very well. We're the type to just like to jump right into it, and that's what's going to happen right here, right now. Let's move into our first segment. Josh Okogie, as we mentioned, has been waived by the Charlotte Hornets. The veteran guard is no longer a part of the Hornets organization. Now, we thought that was probably going to happen. It definitely seemed very likely when both him and the team agreed to push his guaranteed salary date back to Tuesday the 15th. Once that move was made, it was kind of the end-all, be-all there for his time with the Hornets organization, and it seems like come that day, the 15th, on Tuesday, the organization decided, the front office made the move, that it was going to be best to waive Okogie as opposed to try and maybe sign that contract, do guarantee him that $7.7 million and try and move on from him that way. The organization decided against that. Instead, they're just going to waive the veteran. Now, Okogie was acquired from Phoenix in January, so wasn't on the Hornets very long, but in the 15 games he did play with the organization, he averaged 8.9 points a game, 2.7 rebounds, 1.3 assists, and the bright spot when he was on the floor, he averaged just under 2 steals per game, 1.8 to be exact. Now, as we mentioned, that's a small sample size, just 15 games. He did start 6 of them, however, but it wasn't. He didn't make enough of an impact, apparently, in his time here with the Hornets that they felt they should keep him. Now, yes, he is a veteran guard. He was drafted in 2018, and he could have easily been one of those veteran voices coming out of that guard room, coming off the bench that we have spoken about all summer. But with the new logjam in that room, the new abundance of talent at the guard position, who are probably more better suited for a Charles Lee style of play, and if we're just being completely honest, a little bit better NBA players than Okogie overall, it seemed like it was finally time for the Hornets to move on from him. That logjam kind of forced him out the door there. Again, wish him the best. Okogie, he played well while he was here, but it is always nice to save $7.7 million towards the salary cap when it comes to waiving a player like Okogie, who doesn't really have a role, doesn't necessarily fit anywhere in particular here with the organization. Now, somebody else who's probably not upset about the saving of $7.7 million and its use towards the acquisition of more assets is head coach Charles Lee. We mentioned in the preview he sat down with the Charlotte Observer. He spoke to Roderick Boone in an interview and talked about an abundance of different things. Second time we use that word, we're throwing it out here today. Charles Lee spoke about LaMelo and Colin Sexton. He spoke about the overall amount of guards the team has acquired and what that depth means. He dove a little bit into the front court as well, but that's still an uncertainty. It's something that's going to have to be watched and learned in terms of the front court group. But Lee did touch on that a little bit. Now, when he was talking about Colin Sexton, he was asked what he has seen from him early on so far, what has impressed him after Sexton has been brought in. He said Sexton brings a fearlessness, a competitiveness, and a work ethic since day one that he's been very impressed by. Even going on to say that the day he was traded, Sexton was working out in Atlanta. He got in a car that day and drove to Charlotte and has pretty much been in the gym ever since. He said he's been making it a point, going out of his way to build a relationship, to connect with his teammates. LaMelo Ball specifically, he said, when talking about the relationship between Sexton and LaMelo that's been building since Colin got into town, he said that it's been nice to see Sexton and LaMelo talking at every workout. They've been discussing both basketball and just kind of getting to know each other as well. Again, Sexton going out of his way to make that happen, and it seems, according to Lee, like LaMelo is very receptive of the new relationship being built between the two. Now, when Charles Lee was asked a little bit more specifically about the two of them playing on the floor, coexisting together, his quote he said was, "A lot of times you want to have your best 5 players out there, no matter what size they are." And so we know, everyone I think is probably in agreement, Colin Sexton and LaMelo Ball, as the roster sits, are absolutely 2 of the best 5 players out there. And if there is a way to get them on the floor at the same time, have them coexist without the defensive side of the ball or even the offensive side of the ball taking any licks or dropping off at all from that, then that's absolutely something that the fan base, the organization, we all should be very excited about if 2 of the best 5 players can be on the floor at the same time and coexist. And if Charles Lee seems to think that they can, which it sounds like he does, then I'm more inclined to think that, because I am willing to trust Charles Lee and what his plan is for this organization. He seems to be doing pretty well so far. No reason to stop now. Now, not just specific to Colin Sexton and LaMelo, as we mentioned, Lee also talked about the rest of the guards in the room. He said depth gives a coach a lot of different options that he can go for. This was a question specific about after dealing with injuries last year. What does it mean to him to have more guards in the room just in case the same thing happens again? Again, the quote was depth gives a coach a lot of different options. Not kind of vague there, but I think you kind of understand what he means. It allows for him to plug and play different guys, test out lineups, move them around with or without injury. There's depth here, and we know how big rest is nowadays in the NBA. That also adds for that to be something that can be done at the guard position, as you know you've got 2 or 3 on hand at all time. Now, he also said the number of talented guards in the room creates a, quote, healthy competition amongst the position. And quote, helps push people to grow and keep wanting to get better. Now, if you thought we'd get all the way through a Charles Lee interview and only mention the word competitiveness or competition one time, you were very wrong, folks. You know that is a buzzword throughout the Hornets organization as it has been all summer, and Charles Lee is certainly someone who lives by the importance of competitiveness. So if he thinks that bringing in this abundance of guards, this log jam as we called it, in that room can help build a sense of competition, a healthy sense of competition. He did say that he seems so far like there's also a togetherness amongst the guard position, but also a healthy competition where each and everyone knows that on an off night there is another guy right behind him. The coach could go to him and things could change. So everyone is pushed a little harder, focusing a little more, and has that desire to continue to get better. One of the things Lee said is a positive about the abundance of guards in the room. Speaking of guards in a room, we're talking about Baron Davis and Paul George on the podcast with Paul George. Baron Davis went on that podcast and he didn't really say anything crazy or alarming to jump out at. He did, however, challenge LaMelo Ball a little bit in his conversation about where he wants the organization to go, what he thinks this Hornets team can turn into the future. He did say that it's time for LaMelo to step up, stay healthy, and lead like the star you are. Davis not telling us anything we don't know there. Everyone who's watched a Hornets game or just any basketball highlight at this point really understands the star power that is LaMelo Ball, the talent and the ability that he has in his game. But Baron Davis is saying here that it's time for him to step up and be the point guard that the Hornets need. Stay on the floor. The best ability is availability. If LaMelo can stay healthy and it's time now, Baron Davis is saying, for him to take that next step in terms of maturity as well, kind of grow up a little bit, lead the team from the front as the team's best player, along with Brandon Miller, Miles Bridges. If you can do that as the three-headed monster and get LaMelo on the same page with everybody else, as we know his passing is out of this world. If he can find open shooters and do things like that, be a true point guard is what Baron Davis is trying to say, then the Hornets have a lot of promise. They can go a long ways, and we know that bears some weight coming from Baron Davis, who was more than capable during his time in Charlotte, led the Hornets to a playoff appearance while he was here, represented the team as an all-star during his time running the show as the point guard for the Charlotte Hornets. So we know those comments, they don't come just out of left field. They come from someone who knows what they're talking about. Baron Davis, obviously, very well received, highly touted amongst the Hornets fan base. So it'll be interesting to see if LaMelo, I don't want to say listens to that because he's LaMelo and he's great and he knows that. But if he starts to hear more and more of these things and it does take hold and he does become that leader that these older guys are talking about, thinking that he can be. Now, as I mentioned, that's not the most interesting comments throughout the podcast interview. Podcast P had some thoughts of his own about the Hornets. He said that he would never think of signing with the Hornets in free agency because there is no winning culture here in Charlotte. He didn't bash the city per se. He did say he could see, he even said he could see himself living in Charlotte, but that signing here would potentially mean his career is over. Now, the career is over part, I definitely think he's way off about. But the non-winning culture, they haven't won anything since they've come into the league. That part you can't really deny. He's not exactly wrong about. But I do find that quote to be quite funny, interesting, comical, whatever you want to call it, coming from someone like Paul George, having played for the teams he's played for. Now, I know the Pacers, that was not, he didn't sign there. He was drafted by them. The Clippers and the 76ers being the other two teams he's played on. Let's talk about what they have won and their winning cultures. If you want to bring it up, the Pacers and the Clippers have a combined 0 championships. The 76ers have just one, and that came in the same year as Jim Valvano and NC State. That's 1983 for those unfamiliar. So since the Hornets organization has come into the NBA, since they have come into existence, none of the franchises Paul George has played for, or even the one he chose to sign with in Philly, has won anything. They also don't have a winning culture, and we know about what the big picture, the big thought about the 76ers has been since they started the process. I mean, it's like talking about a family member, like talking about your brother. I can say my brother's dumb. I can say the things he does are ridiculous. He looks like an idiot, whatever that may be. But if you also have a dumb brother, you have no right to talk about that. And that's kind of what I think Paul George is doing here. Again, I'm not saying he's wrong about the Hornets not having a winning culture. You can't necessarily deny that. I just think it's kind of laughable that Paul George is the one saying it, having never been a part of a winning culture. Yeah, just food for thought there. Something that I found interesting. Again, it made me laugh when I watched it and I heard Paul George say what he had to say. Speaking of say what you gotta say, we're going to dive into the comment section. I told you that's how we'd wrap up today's show. We're going to bring in Rich T and his thoughts from the chat. He was very active in the chat. Appreciate that, Rich. Thanks for all of your interactions. One of the ones that jumped out to me was what he thought should possibly be done with the roster in terms of trading, making moves for guys. So Rich says that Nick Smith Jr., Pat Connaughton, Josh Green, Taj, Seth, and possibly Spencer Dinwiddie, and some second rounders for a big center. He used the likes of Nikola Vucevic or these guys matching Jonathan Kuminga's salary, possibly even bringing P.J. Washington back. Now, as you know, if you've been watching along, I've been standing on a table all summer for the Hornets to bring in a big man. I think that is an absolute necessity, however it be done, whether it's free agency, making moves, moving some of the assets you recently acquired, whatever it may be. I still think it's vital to bring in a big man. And I agree with you, Rich. I would love for it to be someone like Vucevic. He is, I think, a proven NBA player. He's an anchor in the paint. He's good on defense, and he has some offensive ability that would easily shoot him to the top of that position room here in Charlotte. Now, if you watched along, you know already that I'm not as high on Kuminga as other people are. I just don't think he fits the need, fills the voids that the Hornets are looking for at the big man position. This could be a little bit of overexcitement about what I've seen from Salon in Summer League, but I don't think that Kuminga can do exactly what the Hornets need, especially on the defensive end when they're looking for more height and size on the inside, as they already have the 6'8 wings, the 6'8", 6'9 forwards who can drop down and play the 5. There's a couple of those already in the building. I'm not sure Kuminga necessarily fits that void. And I don't think a PJ Washington return is in the cards. It seems like Dallas wants to keep him where he is. There's talks of that deal coming to fruition by the end of the week. The Mavericks, unless they decide to just completely step back and punt on this season, and I don't think you do that after making the number 1 pick in the draft and having Anthony Davis on your roster. We'll have to see if Kyrie's healthy or not. That will play a factor into their level of competitiveness, but I think they're going to want to try to keep their good guys in-house, PJ Washington being one of those. So what do you guys think about that? You hear what Rich has brought to us here in the chat today. That's what I think about it. I like the move. I've already talked to you yesterday about I think Nick Smith Jr. is on his way out. I do think Pat Connaughton probably makes the roster, as well as Spencer Dinwiddie. But if they are pieces that need to be added to moves to make to add the acquisitions of a big man, then I absolutely think that's fine too. We don't know what it's like to have them here in Charlotte, so if we never learned that, that I think could be tolerable as well. But I want to know what you guys think. We'll pose Rich T's scenario to you guys and have you think. Leave your chat, your answers, your thoughts in the comment section today as well. That, ladies and gentlemen, is going to do it for this episode of Hornets Daily. When we come back tomorrow, it's going to be game day once again. Game 4 of the Summer League will take place on Thursday versus the Spurs at 7 p.m. We'll have a big preview of that game. We've already talked about some names on the Spurs roster yesterday on the show, but we'll dive deep into that matchup more tomorrow on Hornets Daily here, and any other buzz that may be taking place in the Queen City. As you know, that's what we do. Thanks for watching as always, folks. Be sure to hit that subscribe button, like, comment down in the chat. Can't wait to see you right back here tomorrow. Thanks for watching Hornets Daily.